Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, the Board Secretary caused notice of the meeting to be given to the public and the press on January 8th, 2018, and revised March 1st, 2018. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Cornelison, Mr. Donner, Mrs. Gamarikian,
Here.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Munoz,
Here.
Mrs. Rubin,
Here.
Mrs. Shanis,
Here.
Mrs. Turnbull, Mr. Silverstein.
Here.
I move to suspend the rules of the order of business of the regular meeting and adjourn to closed session for matters protected by attorney-client privilege and a residency hearing.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Shanis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We're in closed.
I move approval to reconvene to the regular meeting agenda of the Board of Education.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Munoz. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. We're back in open. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clark, any communications?
I have a few items for the board. The first item, the New Jersey School Boards Association, they have a conference upcoming in April 13th. It's called Opioid Conference. It's at the Conference Center at Mercer, in West Windsor, beginning at 9 a.m. If anyone wishes to attend, please let me know, and I'll make sure that you get registered. Next is New Jersey School Board Association, their weekly program update, March 1st. This was part of your packet. New Jersey School Board Association School Board Notes, February 22nd and 28th. They were both part of your packet. National School Board Association National Connection Daily, February 22nd through March 2nd. They're all part of your packet. The last is an item that we received from the Deputy Mayor Dubois, and there is a program that they're putting on. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight, presented by the Stigma-Free Springfield and the Township of Springfield, the Town Council, at the Chisholm Center on March 28th at 6:30 p.m. I believe that they were also sent out through the listserv from both the middle and the high school. They are for the parents for them to attend if they wish to. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular and executive meetings of February 26th.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Munoz. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motions pass. Mr. DeVino, Superintendent's Report.
Yes. A couple of quick items before we get into the heart of the report. First, congratulations to Sayer Brandstatter, a junior on our girls basketball team. During the first round of the girls playoffs for the North 2 Group 1 sectional tournament, Sayer managed to reach and exceed the 1,000-point scoring milestone in her career. We congratulate her and look forward to her adding to that total in her senior year. Congratulations to Sayer. Congratulations to the girls basketball team, which won that first round of the playoff. Unfortunately, in a highly contested contest against another strong opponent in that group, Secaucus, they fell in a close, very close game, but had a really another successful season. Congratulations to the girls basketball team. And congratulations to the boys who also played in their North 2 Group 1. They also were eliminated in their second round game, but they also had another successful season, and our sports program continues to turn out exceptional student athletes who are successful both athletically and academically. Congratulations to the boys team. I'm actually going to turn the next announcement over to Ms. Scudero because she'll announce an award of a grant. Do you need this?
Back in October, I had received an email through Project Lead the Way, which has been implemented at the middle school, and we're looking to implement at the high school, Principles of Engineering and Introduction to Engineering. I had sent the email to Mr. Salmon, our science supervisor, and I said, I think we should apply for this. And we received an email that Jonathan Dayton High School received a grant of $10,000 for Project Lead the Way. So we're very excited. So we'll be using that towards our engineering courses this fall. Thank you.
Now I'd like to really essentially turn the program over to Mr. Salmon. But before I do that, for those of you that are not aware, as a district, we have participated for the last 3 years in the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program. It's an opportunity for all of our youngsters from grades 5 through 12 in teams of approximately 4 students to devise experiments along very narrow parameters that meet the safety precautions established by NASA and the international space community to devise experiments that have the opportunity to fly and be conducted as part of an experiment in which the control experiment is maintained here on Earth, and the students conduct the control side of the experiment, and they give, and I say that again, they give directions to the astronauts as to how to conduct the experiment in space over a period of days. We've had great success. We have flown on 2 missions. We're about to fly in our 3rd, and I would like to introduce Mr. Salmon, who has some materials to present to you to show you how all of the aspects of the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program tap into the concept of STEAM and STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, math, and all of the other humanities as well. And so, Mr. Salmon, without further ado, please lead us down your journey.
Thank you, Mr. Davino. As Mr. Davino said, we are participating in our 3rd year of SSEP, Student Spaceflight's Experimentation Program. We're involved this year in the Mission 12. Presented here is one of the winning patches from last year's competition. Just to expand a little more on what Superintendent said, the students are involved in creating an experiment that is supposed to be tested in a microgravity environment, aka on the International Space Station, and our control environment stays down here on Earth. So there's the full gravity system down here. The experiment is supposed to be designed to fit inside these small polyurethane tubes, and obviously this is a very large picture, but the tube is only about 7.5 inches in length and about ½ an inch or so in diameter. The clamps on the side of the tube are the ways that the students can change the tube into 1 chamber, 2 chambers, or 3 chambers, depending on how many clamps they have. And as Mr. Davino said, the students are the ones that decide, first of all, the experiment that they're doing, the volumes that need to go inside of each of these sections of the tube, and most importantly, the interactions that the astronauts will actually have with the experiment. The interactions are very minimal because the astronauts have a lot of other experiments they're doing on the space station. So each interaction is limited to around 90 seconds, depending on what the interaction is. If you look at the clamps on this example, they're color-coded with green and blue. So the astronauts know that, say on day 5, they're supposed to open the green clamp and shake, or just wait, or a combination of. And then on day 17, or whatever the day is, maybe they'll open the blue clamp and then shake to end the experiment. So the color-coded clamps are there so the astronauts actually know what to do. We had, trying to think of the number, we had about 287 this year submitted experiments. And amongst them, we got together in early November. I took a group of teachers and community stakeholders that are scientists, and we reviewed the top 35 proposals that the teachers weeded through out of all the 286 that we had. After we weeded down those top proposals, we came up with 3. Those 3 that we as the community decided were sent to the NCESSE, the National Center for Earth and Space Science Education, and that's the governing body for the program. And their scientists there reviewed our top 3 and chose from that top 3 the final flight group. So tonight we're going to honor first the 2 finalists that are not flight groups, but they still made it through our vetting process. So the first group is a group of 7th graders from Mrs. Gillen's class. So I'm going to call you up. I have a couple of certificates for you. So we have Sophie DePaul. Angeline Peralta. Michaela Arauco. And Abigail Friedman. So I don't know if Mrs. Gillen, you want to come up with a picture with them? Their experiment that they designed was, how does microgravity affect the growth of Bacillus subtilis colonies on agar? So we thought this was a very good experiment. It was very well written. As Mr. Davino said, this type of project hits all sorts of ends of our educational process, including writing. One of the things we discovered with this program is that when we send the proposals to the NCSSE, one of the most important things that they look for is how well written is the proposal. So the proposals need to not only be scientifically sound, but they need to be written as if they are research scientists. So there's a lot on the line here. And for 7th graders to write these proposals, anywhere from 5th grade to 12th graders, but for 7th graders to write these proposals is really amazing to sit and read them. So congratulations to this group. The next group of finalists we had was 9th graders from Mrs. Ornovitz's biology honors class. So Abby Hochreiner. Mark Cunningham. And Juliana Houston. Oh, I guess I'll stand in for Mrs. Orlovitz. And their experiment was the effects of microgravity on Staphylococcus aureus, which again, if you notice the trend here, there's 2 biological experiments. And the biological experiment seems to be the ones that that run more frequently than things that are non-biological. One of the interesting ones that I saw last year that I hope to see surface again sometime was a non-biological one. It was actually testing the strength of the curation of concrete in microgravity. So I thought that was really interesting. The students, again, in their proposal, they had to come up with rationales for it and how it can be used. Well, a proposal like that, they were rationalizing how if you're trying to colonize different planets, you don't necessarily want to bring materials with you. You want to use the materials there. So I thought that was a really interesting way to look at things. And our final group is the flight group, a group of 7th graders from Mrs. Gillen's class. So we have Cecilia Perez. Paige Lieberman. Emma Felisa. And Krika Patel. Now, their experiment is will tardigrade eggs hatch and develop in microgravity? So if anyone does not know, tardigrades are conamed water bears. They're a very small zoological creature that was discovered. And what's nice about them is that they have a lot of, they're able to survive in a lot of different sorts of harsh environments. And the girls wound up making contact with a research scientist at Unity University up in Maine, right? Maine, got that right? Dr. Perry, she is she has her master's, I think, in zoology, so she has a zoological background, and she's a PhD in biology. And the girls were in communication with her on how to properly collect and care for and make observations on the tardigrades. Experiments have been done in the past with tardigrades. However, the girls came up with a question about how or will the tardigrades actually hatch and develop in microgravity. So an experiment like that has not been done. So this is a very original experiment, and we look forward to seeing it fly, hopefully in June, and look forward to their presentation in Washington, D.C. at the end of June. So. One of the other aspects to this project, to the SSCP project, is the arts component to it. Now, in space flight, the astronauts have patches that go onto their sleeves, and part of this program allows for students to design patches for this. Mr. Slate, the arts supervisor for the district, is here. I don't know, would you like to say a couple things, Mr. Slate? All right. So we have a patch competition that we run as well, K through 12. So because of the size of the district and because of the variety of students that we have in the district, the program allows for us to run not just one, but two patch competitions simultaneously, one for grades K through 5 and one for grades 6 through 12. So this last little bit really takes in the final arts component of this full STEAM project. And the first slide I had up was one of the winners from previous years, and we have the winners here tonight from this year. So here are the patch designs that the students made. On the left is from Sari Rakusen, grade 4, and her design was for the K through 5 patch competition. And on the right we have Faith Lobo from grade 8, and her design is from the 6 through 12 patch competition. So without further ado, ladies, Sari? Now, these designs, they were, again, as Mr. Vino said before, with the experiment, we were given certain parameters to follow with the experiment. And so again, with the patch design, we were given certain parameters as well. The students were supposed to design a patch that fits on a 3.5 by 3.5 maximum square. So these designs, again, as large as they are, they're quite small. They're only 3.5 by 3.5 inches. We've had students that have designed circular patches as well with a diameter of only 3.5 inches. But this year we have 2 square patches, which is very nice. Now, I would have the original artwork with me. However, last week I mailed them in to the NCSSE. They are going to mail them to NanoRacks and DreamUps, and NanoRacks is going to ship these to the ISS. So their original artwork will be shipped up to the International Space Station, where it will be in microgravity as well for a certain time. And then they'll actually send it back to us. It'll be pressed with a stamp saying that it flew in space on the ISS. And eventually, whenever we get it back, we'll have it on display in the, hopefully in the IMC with some other of the patches over the years. And in addition to this flying in space, we are in the process of sending the patch to a physical patch making stitching company to make physical patches. So we look forward to seeing that, because those are always really neat to see the original design juxtaposed with the cloth patch. It's always really neat to see that. So congratulations to everybody. And thank you to Mr. DeVino and the Board of Ed for supporting this program. So continue to have spaceflight in Springfield.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon, and thank you to all of the great scientists and artists and budding astronauts out there. It's amazing to see just the things that you guys have come up with that I think I'm fairly confident I can say nobody up here would have even thought about, much less been able to put into a proposal. So congratulations on your hard work and seeing that hard work pay off, and we will all be keeping our fingers crossed for a June launch. We've learned over the first 2 that we need to be a little patient with NASA and with the private companies that are flying the missions, but we'll all keep our fingers crossed. And thank you to the teachers. I think, is this all 3 years in a row? Mrs. Gillen's hiding back there, but it's 3 for 3 now, right? I mean, no pressure on anybody else, but 3 for 3 plus one of these semifinalists. So thank you all, not only to Mrs. Gillen, but to all the science teachers across the district and Mr. Salmon who've really embraced the program, and the art teachers who've really taken this across the district. So not only the upper grades that are doing the science and engineering component, but really K all the way up through 12. They've done some amazing work with the patches. So we appreciate all the fine work that's gone in from teachers as well. So thank you.
Before we close the superintendent's report, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're all aware of a projected student walkout or activity associated with the tragedy in Parkland, Florida on March 14th. Rest assured that the high school administration has been in constant and close discussion with the representatives of student government to make sure that we really want to walk a very cautious line of allowing them opportunity for expression while providing the critical safe environment that we're so concerned about with respect to the conditions of notification to the world that certain activities will be taking place. That conversation has been ongoing it is and has been productive so far. And we're beginning to get the formulation of a set of parameters that the students feel will allow them to make the necessary statements they feel compelled they need to make. And administratively, we feel confident that within those parameters, we can provide a sufficient modicum of safety and security, which is paramount. So we're walking that very narrow course, but you should all be proud as a community of the level of activity and concern that the students are exhibiting, and their willingness to examine a variety of parameters and a variety of solutions to make things better, but also to make sure that their concerns are heard. So at some point there will be a letter sent out by both the principals of all the buildings. These activities are pretty much confined to the middle and the high school, and we will be putting out exactly what those plans construct as a way of approaching this and clarifying for you as parents exactly what the status will be within the district on that day in particular. So you'll know exactly what it is that we've reached with respect to providing that opportunity to our students. And that essentially concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you.
I move to accept and approve the superintendent's report as presented.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Shanis. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. The superintendent's report is accepted. Public input on agenda items. If anybody would like to speak to items that were on the agenda for tonight's meeting, now's the time to come up to the podium. Just give us your name and address for the record, and we'll take comment on those items. If not, we'll move into the business session. If there are folks who are here for the SSCP that don't necessarily want to stay for the whole thing, you're welcome to. Please, we love to have folks in the audience. Don't feel compelled. We won't be insulted. People, so we might want to give everybody was just waiting for that opportunity, so I'm giving it to you. Just give everybody a couple of minutes to make their decisions to stay or go. Make sure that everybody sat down. The good news is that opens up the really great seats in the front. It's amazing how StubHub works in here. All right, so now that everybody's reseated, we'll move on to the business portion of the meeting. Mr. Munoz, will you call finance?
Yes, I move to approve finance 1 through 3.
Moved by Mr. Munoz, seconded by Mrs. Shanis. Any discussion on these three? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motions pass. Mr. Miller, school government.
I'd like to move items 1 through 6 with a roll call vote.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Munoz. Any discussion on these 7 items? 6, I'm sorry. These 6 items. No, Mr. Clark, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gamarikian? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Munoz?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Mrs. Shanis? Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motion's pass. Buildings and grounds, I'm trying to remember who else is on buildings and ground. Mrs. Rubin, will you call buildings and grounds in Mrs. Cornelison's absence? Moved by Mrs. Rubin, seconded by Mrs. Shanis. Any discussion on these motions? Matt, do we have timing on, assuming motion 4 passes, do we have timing on when they'll get started and what the time frame looks like for the remediation?
Time frame will depend on weather, of course.
We don't have any of that coming in, do we?
Not at all. But it'll take about a week to get through the contract, the signatures. We have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for, I want to say it's next week. I believe next Thursday. So we'll go through that. And then most likely during the month of April and May, that's when the remediation will take place.
Great. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Mr. Clark?
Mrs. Gamarikian? Yes. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Munoz?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Yes. Mrs. Shanis? Yes. Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motion passes. Motions pass, I should say. Back to open public session. Opportunity for you to come up and address the board on anything. I just like to ask folks to be mindful of the fact that we do have not quite as large a crowd as we did before, but still a large crowd. So let's just be respectful of everybody's time and try not to repeat things that others have said. So if you just do me a favor, the microphone's right there, and just give us your name and address and tell us what you'd like to talk about.
My name is Max DePaul, and what was the other thing that you wanted me to
Just
say?
your address, Max. Just the street, the number, your street number and street name.
15 Oak Ridge.
Thank you.
About 2 to 3 months ago, I thought about my camp and how there was really fun activities there, how we had a Gaga pit and all the other stuff. And so I thought, why can't we have a Gaga pit? My mom told me that once before we were at, there was a chance that we were going to have a Gaga pit, but it got declined. The purchase order was ready. So I went in and I surveyed kids, and 152 kids wanted a Gaga pit.
Max, can I just ask which school you're attending now?
I am attending Thelma L. Sandmeyer.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to know which school we were talking about.
It is a pit with surrounding walls that people can play in, and they hit a ball around. And what you try to do is you try to hit the ball at the other person's foot. And if you hit the ball at the other person's foot, they're out. And there's other ways to get them out, which is more into detail with the game, but so
You can just give it to Mrs. Gamaricki and she'll pass it around to the rest of us. Thank you.
the copy pieces are at the top. I tried to get everybody's last name.
Thanks, Max.
Well, actually, that took me about 5 to 6 days. And after that, I thought that I surveyed almost every kid that I possibly could, so I didn't want to do it over and over again.
Thank you very much for bringing this to us, Max. We will take a look at your petition. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello.
Hello.
Do you need my name and
We
address?
do need your name and
All right.
address.
I'm Zoe Fry. I live on 11 Cayuga. And we are here to talk about the walkout. We are a representation from each grade, and we are the presidents of 4 out of the 5 student council boards. We have been talking to administration for the last week, and we have yet to come to a finalized conclusion, and time is now getting very limited, so we're really, really trying to come up with a compromise and not either extreme. We understand where administration is coming from, where they're concerned about our safety by walking outside. However, we want to be part of this movement that many high school students across the country are also a part of. So we don't want our voice to be taken away by being limited on what we're allowed to do. And by being limited, I don't mean not being able to walk outside. I mean having our opinions be heard on what we want to take part of inside. We've talked to Dr. Francis, Mr. Slate, Mr. Davino, and I feel at this point we were just talking in circles, and it's getting late, and there's only like a week and a half until the actual March 14th date comes. We hear that there is a motion for an assembly to happen on that date, and although I do think that is a great idea, I think there are also other ideas that could be a more compromise between both the walkout and not having a walkout. I was researching what other schools are doing, and I heard that another school in South Florida actually had or is having some type of walkout in the school, like a walkout of class. So it's in the hallways, and in the hallways are like tables where 18-year-olds can register to vote. There was something about writing a letter to legislation and not in a political stance, in a we want safety in our school type of stand. So things like that, I feel, could be more of a compromise between the two ideas. But I do think that we have been trying to talk. We're talking a lot in circles on why we can't be allowed to do things and not necessarily on what can be done instead. So now we're coming up with ideas, and we feel that there are other ideas that can be in place to make a compromise. Do you have anything else to say?
Well, thank you, Zoe, for bringing it to our attention. Obviously, it's something, as Mr. Davino said, that we've all been talking about. I know you and I have had a chance to talk about, and without prejudging where the administration's going to come out, it sounds to me the kinds of things that you're describing are exactly the kinds of things that I've been hearing from the administration in terms of how to thread this needle. And I say it's a needle because just so the public's aware, the challenge here for all districts is to find a way to make sure that the kids' voices are heard, because the message is important, and the fact that the kids feel so strongly that they are the messengers is equally important. And I don't think there's a person here that wants to do anything but support those efforts. The flip side of that is the last thing we want to do is, in the name of a movement that is aimed at ensuring safe schools, take any action that would do anything but keep our kids safe. And that's what the concern has always been around, is figuring out ways to make sure that kids' voices can be heard in the way that you want them to be heard, but to do it safely. The other piece that districts have to deal with, that I know is incredibly boring to most people, but we have to think about them, is we don't have the option to apply the student code of conduct only to those things that we might disagree with. So the fact that, personally, as an individual, I think the message that you have is spot on. The board and the administration doesn't have the ability to say, well, we agree with you guys, so we're not going to impose the code of conduct if people decide to walk out, and then have somebody get up tomorrow with a different view on a different topic that perhaps all of us in the room would disagree with and say, but we're going to apply it there. So the challenge that the administration's had is to figure out a way, and through the compromise that you talked about, Zoe, is figure out a way where we can give the students the opportunity to craft their message and to get their message out in a way that doesn't come in conflict with the code of conduct, so we never have to face the how do we avoid imposing something, because you never run afoul of the code of conduct in the first place. And it sounds to me what you're describing, and I know the process of going through and trying to find compromise is frustrating.
It's been tough, yeah.
Welcome to the real world. That's what we have to do all the time. And I think what you're doing now, in a lot of ways, the lessons that you're learning in terms of kind of, people say it's sometimes kind of ugly to see how the sausage gets made. This is how the sausage gets made. People sit in a room and they go around and around and ultimately come out with an answer that everybody can live with. So I think what you guys are doing is great. I would encourage you to write down the plans, because another difficulty I know is everybody talks a lot, but until you kind of write something down and coalesce around it, it's kind of hard to say, yes, that works, no, it doesn't. So I'd encourage you four, as the leaders of the various classes, to put something down in writing so you and the administration have something to work from. And then I think it becomes pretty easy, because what I'm hearing, unless I've been hearing things wrong, what I'm hearing from the kinds of things you want to do in terms of having a table for voter registration and not wanting this necessarily to be just a 17-minute movement, but something that can happen before the 14th and live on after, those are exactly the kinds of things that I've heard the administration talking about. It's just a question of how to do it safely. So I think you guys are awfully close, if not in violent agreement here.
I do think, though, that the next step would be for us as students to talk through the plan and not with administration yet, because I think the problem is we're talking in circles because we keep having conversations with new members of the administration. So I think that I know there's a student council meeting tomorrow morning, so if as students we come together and we have this peaceful talk instead of a lot of opposing sides arguing with each other again and again in circles, that we will come up with a plan structure that everyone hopefully agrees with, that we really can make as a good alternative for a walkout or do something very similar.
I think
and then we'll come.
I think that'd be great. I think the way you describe it is kind of a walk out of class, but a walk in the building,
Yeah.
and a way, where you guys design the message and you guys get the message out in an environment that the school, and obviously in consultation with the police department, feel is safe. That's what everybody's goal is. So I'm sure you and Dr. Francis will be happy to take a look at the proposal and make sure that everybody's on the same page. But what I'm hearing sounds like the right direction based on what I've heard from administration over the last couple of weeks.
I believe that's what's been taking place. Certainly, you guys have to get together. You've heard all the parameters that Dr. Francis and your advisors have provided you with. And as Dr. Francis, I believe, told you, you have to come up with some substantive plans and practices so that the administration of the school can evaluate how they're going to be able to facilitate that.
Spencer Gary. As a student of Jonathan...
Spencer, we just need your address for the record.
19 Sherwood Road.
Thanks.
As a student of Jonathan Dayton, how is the school community safer from what happened?
How is what?
How has the school community been safer? Have any protocols been put into place to make it so what happened in Florida doesn't happen here?
Well, I mean, we haven't. If the question is, have we changed protocols based on Parkland? I think the answer is it's too early to draw lessons from there that can be implemented. We haven't gotten specific guidance from law enforcement that deals directly with Parkland. I can tell you that after previous incidents, we have adapted our protocols based on advice from both Springfield Police Department, the State Police, and New Jersey Department of Education. We have training with those agencies where they come into the buildings. Sometimes you guys know they're there, sometimes you don't. There have been cases where there have been lockdown drills and the state's been in watching with us, and then we'll have after-action meetings where the administration and the law enforcement agencies will go through and say, okay, this worked, this didn't, or they'll just say, whether something worked or not, they'll say, why did you do this? And make sure that we've clearly got a plan thought out. So those things are ongoing, and they happen not because something happened in Parkland, but because the goal is always to make sure we keep our students and our staff as safe as possible. That said, when somebody comes into a school the way that the person did in Parkland, it's about the reaction, not the action in the first case. So the first thing is make sure that everybody knows what the current protocols are in place, make sure people are following them. That's why we drill every month, why the state requires that. And we'll continue to do that. And as the law enforcement agencies have lessons learned that we can implement, I know the administration will do that.
Thank you.
The one thing that I would also add, and I know it happens, I've had 2 kids go through the high school, and I know it's prevalent in the high school, although it happens at the other schools, is a student or a parent who have gotten buzzed in or you swiped in, walk into a building and, 2 other kids or a parent are coming in behind you, and people let those people into the building because they feel they either know them or they look familiar. What you really need to do, and I say this to all the parents and people will think you're being rude, you need to close the door behind you and just tell them that they need to buzz in themselves or swipe themselves in. Because this was a former student in Parkland. Kids knew him. They may have thought he had issues, but they knew him. And it could be the type of thing where somebody could have let him into a building because of that. And it's very, very important. And our rules are, especially for the students, you swipe in. And I know, for instance, a kid loses their ID, leaves their ID at home. They don't want to be, buzz in and be announced late. You're all smiling because you know it happened. And your friend says, oh, wait, just let me in with you. It's a problem. And that's something that you guys are in control of. Parents walking into a building who have an appointment are in control of not letting another person in with them. And it's really very important because it allows our office staff to know who's coming into the buildings, and it gives us control of who's coming into our buildings. So it's something that, it is one of our rules. Don't pry open a door because somebody had to run out to their car to get something. It's one of our rules to make sure the door's locked behind you, to keep our buildings safe, but we all know in reality that everyone has their own little workaround when they need to do something about it, and you can't monitor every single door of every building all day long. It's not possible. So we rely on our students and our teachers and our administrators that are in the building to do the best, but there are a lot more of our students than there are of everyone else. So you guys should, talk to your classmates, and it's something that you could do to be proactive also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the general public, I think it's important that you understand that we are in continuous contact with a variety of law enforcement agencies and reviewing procedures based upon tragedies that occur at really unfortunate schools and large gatherings. Every time there is an event of this nature, there is an evaluation by all of the law enforcement agencies that evaluate and devise plans to address these issues. And that information is disseminated on a regular basis with respect to directives and guidance to schools and communities and a variety of venues that events like this can occur. To give you an example of a change in procedure, prior to Columbine, the standard procedure in an active shooter experience in a school building for first responders was to wait outside. That was standard operating procedure. Columbine had a significantly larger impact on the devastation that a practice like that would result in. And there was lots of conversation and discussion around that particular practice. And we as an administration are consistently attending updates that are provided for us by Homeland Security, by the State Police Department, local police departments, and a variety of security experts. And that changed pretty much nationally from a position of to wait and assess to go in immediately to end the carnage, if you will. Along with that came some very horrific kinds of learnings. If the police were going to go in, there were going to be practices that they would have to implement that would seem uncaring and somewhat disconcerting. They were not, part of that practice they learned was they were not in a position as first responders to attend to the wounded. And they didn't. That's the practice. They have to attend to the active shooter, and their purpose is to, in the shortest amount of time, to take down the threat. Additionally, we were taught, and there are two schools of thoughts out there. You will hear some security experts take the position to run, just run. Our state police, the Department of Education, and most of the law enforcement, at least in this area, take the opposite approach, which is to secure, hide, and delay as long as possible until the police and first responders can control the situation as best as possible. As a school district, to answer the concerns of our young people, we have one major advantage that a lot of school communities don't have. And particularly with our high school, but even with our other 4 schools, we're all within 1 mile of the police department. Our police department is here about as fast as any police department could get to any location, much more quickly than they can in other communities. Additionally, I can honestly say, having been in this business a long time, that you have a police department that, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, if you have the opportunity, you should, each and every one of you, thank the Lord that you have John Cook as your police chief, because he has an exceptional record, he has an exceptional department, and he understands exactly what he and his department need to do to protect, to the extent possible, the young people in this school district, etc. We discuss each and every type of occurrence and the type of response so that we're always on the same page. We are never questioning each other at all. We understand exactly what their purpose is, and we'll do everything within our power. As Mr. Silverstein will tell you, after one of our drills, in which, whether you know this or not, the State Ed Department conducts surprise visits. on school districts. And they will come into a district and say, pick an elementary school, we're going there now. And we just go there and they put a drill into place. Not even the principal of the school knows we're arriving. They just arrive and they call the emergency. And we then assess the response of staff members, students, and everyone so that we can identify where there are going to be breakdowns. Because if there's one thing I want to make you aware of, you can practice and drill forever. If we post and say today's a drill, and you go through it, and everybody does nicey nice, etc., everybody knows it's a drill. There's no panic. When they don't know what's happening, you can find the weaknesses in your drills. You find the places where things break down. And the other part of it is drills are wonderful things for one major reason. It's a drill. So every door, every exit, everything operates just the way it's supposed to. No one knows where the entry of an active shooter is going to take place. We all like to think it's going to be at the front door. I can tell you with experience, generally speaking, they're looking for a side door somewhere, a window. They're looking for a way into the building so that they can gain access without being detected until they can get doing what they're going to do. One of the reasons why we don't adhere to a flight protocol is you don't know where it's coming from. If you run, you can run into the danger or you can run into each other. There's no plan in place. We've done our best. We follow the protocols. We evaluate them. I can tell you that there's no question in my mind we'll be contacted sometime in the near future with the results of the after effects of Parkland, some of the things that they've learned, whether or not they are recommending changes to procedures and practices, and they will be implemented as recommended. We take their input seriously, and we implement all of their recommendations. I can't do any more to give you advice and insight. There are things that we do that we're not going to tell you about because that's part of the safety protocol. One of the things that school districts have been told, for example, is, in the past, you could go online and you could get a footprint and full floor plan for just about every school in the United States. You'd be able to find them online. I dare say that if you tried to get floor plans for schools right now online and you were detected, you're probably going to get a visit from some law enforcement agency as to why you wanted a floor plan for a school building. Because we've taken ours off, and the only people that have our floor plans and our access points are the police department. So these are things that get changed that you're not always aware of, and a lot of it you can't be aware of because the police tell us this is the way we need to operate. And Mr. Silverstein will tell you about the after meeting at one of our schools and how our staff were questioned by the police department and what their responses were.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. There were a couple of things that they asked the staff, well, why did you do X? And they answered, well, because we've talked to the police department before, and they said this is the way they want us to do that. And the answer from the State Department of Education was, that was a trick question, and that was the perfect answer. Because there are two different ways to do it. You can do X or you can do Y. Neither one of them is necessarily right or wrong. They both work, but what's most important is that the police know exactly what to expect from the people on the inside. So the answer they gave was the only right answer, which is we did it that way because our police department told us to. And that's, as Mr. Davino was saying before, the close working relationship that the district enjoys with this police department, particularly under Chief Cook, I can tell you is not something that every district has. It's not something that this district always had. But since Chief Cook has been here, it's something that we've had on every level. And walking around during these drills with officers from the Springfield Police Department, they know these buildings, they know what they're looking for, and that you can never be completely assured that you can protect against everyone, that anyone can protect against everything. But walking around with people who knew the building and were looking for things, and by and large not finding them, which is good, that would endanger our kids, gave me a great sense of comfort. And knowing that our administration, our protocols are set up based on the discussions that they've had, because this stuff has been talked through beforehand, not designed after the fact. Is it going to change in as a result of Parkland? Spencer, as Mr. Davino said, it will undoubtedly change, or at least it will be discussed. Whether law enforcement agencies come up with changes they recommend, we don't know yet. But whatever they come up with, whatever the best practices are, those are the ones that we'll implement when they tell us to do that. I've talked enough, so anybody else that would like to address an issue?
Hi, thank you for telling me a little bit about what you've done and the protocols. I don't really know much.
We just need your name and address.
Suzanne Sayas, 29 Mapes.
Thanks.
I have a 3-year-old. I'm here because I'm thinking about her future. My brothers were here in the 90s. I went to Union Catholic. When I needed to find a place to raise my child, I came back to Springfield. And I hope I made the right choice, and I think I did. But I'm a vocal person. I happen to be an attorney, and I happen to have a little bit of a voice in the community, and I can tell you right now, you're going to see this face a lot in the next 15 years. Because when things like this happen, like Parkland, I can't keep my mouth shut. So I want to just throw some things out there, some thoughts that I've had. I was a prosecutor in the Bronx District Attorney's Office, and the thought that comes to my mind after Parkland is the fact that a police presence really is a deterrent to crime. The school districts have their own little world. You guys know that better than me because I'm not in that world. So you understand that it's entirely different. It's got its own nucleus. And children are policing that nucleus for the most part. I think we'd like to hope that the supervisors, the teachers and the administrators are policing it as much as they can, but the kids are on the ground. They're on the forefront, and they're seeing what's happening. Underneath that underworld is the So within that underworld, high schools, elementary schools, middle schools, is an even deeper underworld, which I think is the social media underworld and the internet. And that also is unpoliced. And children are policing it. They're the ones that are saying something if they see something. And they're the ones that are not saying something if they see something. And I don't know how to fix that. I've thought in my bed or at night, maybe there needs to be some sort of mandatory presence if a kid is going to be on Instagram. I don't really know the answer. So I think there has to be an assumption of an imminent threat. And with that assumption means let's police it. And I know that means money. How are we going to get a cop in each one of the schools? I appreciate that the police department is right down the street. I have a cousin that's a lieutenant there. And that is comforting, but there's nothing better than a police within the school. Police officer, not security officer. I'm talking about a guy with a badge, one or two, and I know how much that costs. I talked to Steve Goldstein, the old mayor, just today of Springfield, and we talked about it being about 1,000 per school, so that's 5,000 a day. So we're talking $1.5 million. So where's that money going to come from? I don't know, taxes. But I do know this. Springfield is just as small as Sandy Hook. It's just as small as Parkland. As far as I'm concerned, we're just as likely to have a horrible, horrific event.
You want to try to put a different one up there?
No,
no, we can hear you.
I figured you could. So, in case you didn't, who's going to think about $1.5 million if something horrible like that happens to our kids? I think each one of us will gladly try and put up that money. I've also thought about things that don't cost any money that maybe can be implemented, and I don't know if you do it or not. I'm going to use my phone here just to stick within my notes. First of all, I don't know if you have the groundwork, the foundations, meaning the Columbine lock on all of the doors. I have no idea if you have that. I hope you do. Bulletproof doors, the ID badges. I know you do have. Supervision in the hallways. The windows in the classroom, I don't know if it has the wire guard. Those are the basics that I'd like to think that each one of the Springfield schools has. And if they don't, I'd love to hear that from you guys. So maybe I can do a move.org. This is a wealthy area. Maybe some parents will start to put up some money if you guys need it to get those locks if you don't have the locks. So if any of those things that I just mentioned are not a part of the school system, I'd love to hear it so I can try and help. The things that don't cost any money is raising awareness. I mean, how awesome was the Moms Against Drunk Drivers? It's like the biggest no-no is to drink and drive because of this movement and the awareness of drugs and things like that. I think this needs to be added to the docket, this meaning some sort of a...
Hey Laura, can you switch with her? Nah, I think we might have a battery issue.
Hello? Maybe add a class or have a seminar for children and for parents to just talk about the importance of parental supervision on social media, to talk about the kids. Definitely speak up if you see anything. It can't just be like, let's talk about this for the next month. And then we fall silent, just like Columbine. And then Sandy Hook happens, and then we talk about it again for a month. And then we fall silent. Parkland has to be the last straw. And I think there needs to be a constant talk about this. Just like how there's a constant talk about bullying. There's a constant talk about no drink and driving. There's a constant talk about no drugs in schools. Why don't we add this to the docket, whether it's a seminar or a class for the school? Even sex ed used to be something we didn't do. Now it's the norm. I think this needs to be added because this is our new normal, unfortunately. And the people that are at risk are our children. An anonymous hotline. The kids will come up here right now and tell you, I'm not telling. Are you kidding me? That kid's going to find out I said something. How about a complaint box, an anonymous complaint box that nobody will know, that they put the, put it on the internet, make it an email box so they don't have to be seen going to the box to say so-and-so wrote this on Instagram and posted this picture. So what I would like is to come back in a couple weeks and see if any of those ideas were talked about amongst you very important and intelligent people, and see if anything is going to be implemented. I want to be the voice of the kids that that are too scared to say anything or don't have these type of ideas.
Well,
okay.
First, thank you for your comments and your concerns. Let me not let you wait a couple of weeks, and let me try to unpack some of what you said and give you some comfort that not only have we already talked about, but implemented many of the things that you're talking about. I know your child's only 3, so you haven't seen it all in action yet, but hopefully it'll give you some comfort that we're thinking along the same lines and are already there on many of the things that you're talking about. And in no particular order, just the order I remember them. In terms of internet safety, that is a key component for us. As you probably know, we have a one-to-one laptop program from 6th through 12th grade. Every student gets a laptop to use during the year for those 6 years of school. And a key piece of giving them that piece of technology is teaching them how to use it and how not to use it. So the kids are getting lessons in the school, and particularly at the beginning of the year when they go through getting their laptops out again, where they stress internet safety and cyberbullying. We have a cyberbullying program that's done in the schools and done for parents every year. And if folks haven't attended that in the past, I know the kids have, but if parents haven't attended it, I encourage you to do it. We do it in conjunction with the Union County Prosecutor's Office, and they come in and do a whole session on internet safety. It's interesting to me to go to those sessions and watch the parents and watch them put apps up on the screen that the parents have no idea exist. We're like half a step ahead of that because Chief Cook finds out about them. He lets Mr. Davino know, then he comes and tells us. So we're familiar with them, but most parents aren't. In terms of kids speaking up, you've seen some of the kids speak up tonight, and they are representatives of their classes, but they are really representative of our student population. Our student population is very good about seeing something and saying something, and they have ways to do it in ways that it doesn't necessarily come back to them. And that's important because you mentioned harassment and bullying. The harassment, intimidation, and bullying law puts the onus on the district to become, in some sense, the internet police, because harassment, intimidation, and bullying that happens over the internet has to, once it's reported to us, is dealt with as if it happened in school, if it has an impact on the school environment of the students involved. So we do get involved in those. Our principals, our guidance counselors are involved with issues like that on a daily basis. You're right, it does take somebody seeing something in order to say something. The one thing we don't have is the ability to watch everybody's internet communications.
It'd be great if it was mandatory.
I don't know that there are enough hours in the day for any of us, but we get reports from parents all the time. We get reports from students all the time, and they're followed through. In terms of the doors, I know all the doors in this building. There's some stuff we can't, but there's some stuff that we have talked about publicly. Doors in this building, doors in FMG as well.
Yeah.
Were replaced over the last couple of years. So those kinds of things, the kind of best practices in terms of facility, those are implemented. The smaller windows, things like that. So can you do everything? No. There's always something else that's out there that you could do. To give you a sense of what $1.5 million, I'm going to assume that number is right. $1.5 million is more than the state aid that we get every year. And that number went down to 0 8 years ago and is almost back to the point where it was when the government, the state took everything away. We're almost up to right around 1.4, 1.5.
You're about 1.3, and the only reason why you got up there is because of the choice program.
School,
otherwise, you'd still be about 3/5 of what you received back in 2009, 2010.
Yep. So that gives you an idea of how big a chunk of the budget is. At the last meeting that we had last week, we did pass a resolution that was a model resolution that the New Jersey school boards put out about school safety and mental health, and how important we thought that it was that our state and federal elected officials take action on that. And we've sent that resolution to those officials, and you heard from our students. I think we all agree with you that Parkland, it's more than enough, and
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a one-time discussion. I'm pretty confident that these kids are going to not allow it to be a one-time discussion. So, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you see the car that's sitting out there that's all broken up. That's from the drunken driving movement.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a constant reminder. I think we have to have a constant reminder here in the school, some sort of scare them straight seminar with horrific scenes, just to sort of remind everybody and keep it alive. All right, thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Allison Miller, 1 Hemlock Terrace. I just wanted to come out and say that I'm really in support of my child and a lot of his friends who have come to me and told me they want to do the walkout. They were concerned about getting in trouble, and I said to them, listen, you know, if you get in trouble, I've got your back. I'm okay with it. There are consequences, and I understand there's consequences, but if you truly believe in something, it's worth fighting for. This is the new generation. These kids are making change. They want to be heard. To be stifled and have to go into an auditorium, I think, is unfair. That's not what they want. What I'm hearing from these kids and their friends is that they want to do the walkout like so many other kids all across the country are doing. I understand that you're concerned about their safety, but why is it any more precarious than them going to a football game or a fire drill or any other reason that they're walking out? I feel like you're creating this panic that, oh, they're in such peril from doing this walkout for 17 minutes. It's not that long. I feel like it can be done in a safe manner with some police officers there for presence. What's wrong with going to the football field where they can be together and protected by a couple of police officers or even some volunteers? I feel like the administration is stifling our children. I feel like the administration is pushing they're trying to make it too safe. We can't have our kids in a bubble all the time. We can't create irrational fears too. I realize there are fears. I realize that horrible things have happened and these kids are leading the change that we need. And I feel like it's unfair to tell them they have to go in an auditorium and not do what the other kids are doing in other schools. And you know, this is democracy at its finest, and you're stifling that. And I support my child and any other child that wants to do the walkout. And if my kid gets in trouble, so be it. He'll be fighting for something that he believes in, and I've got his back. Thanks.
I can tell you that there's no desire on anyone's part to stifle expression. The concern is safety, and there are districts, certainly across the country, where they're in a different position physically, and they're better able to protect a field, for instance. Look at the football field out here. It opens onto Mountain Avenue with a chain link fence between, or a wrought iron fence between Mountain Avenue. Well, hold on. It's not as if we didn't think about all of these different possibilities. The backfield, you can walk straight over from Mizell. It's completely open with trees that have no leaves on them because we're in winter, and the police department doesn't have the manpower to police that kind of perimeter. There are districts where you've got, for example, a middle school and a high school that comprise a campus, and the fields are in the back, and there's no access, and there's an easy way to close off access. And those districts are doing it outside, but the State Department of Education put out a guidance document last week encouraging districts to find the safest place to allow the students the opportunity to have to express themselves, but do it in a safe environment. And for some districts, because of the way things are configured, that place is inside. And
but that's not a walkout. That's not what the national movement is.
With all due respect, there are plenty of districts around the country where walking out of the classroom is the walkout. And personally, I don't think we should get so caught up, and I don't think the kids are particularly caught up on the location. They're caught up in the message, and the message is what's important and what shouldn't be lost. Because the thought that we're arguing about where the safest place is to have a a movement in favor of school safety. I don't want the location to overshadow the message that we're all, I think, in agreement with here, that we need to have the message of needing to do something about school safety, and the fact that these kids are adamant that they be the messengers. That's what's important. Where they do it, to me, other than making sure they're safe, the location is far less important. And I think standing up and saying we're stifling kids because we won't let them go to a place that the law enforcement community and the administration just feel isn't safe for them because it's out, in this case, on Mountain Avenue. You know.
Yeah, but don't they go out there for fire drills?
But do they
all the
go
time?
out there for fire drills at 10 a.m. on March 14th? That's announced a month in advance, specifically
But
to make a
football
point.
games are.
To make a point about gun safety. I mean, you're talking about the things that have happened in schools have happened because people have access to weapons that can kill quickly, and people that feel strongly about their continued access to those weapons that can kill quickly. If it's the wrong people, there are plenty of people who have access to weapons, who treat them properly and know how to handle them. That's not who I'm talking about. But there are some people, as we all know out there, witness Parkland, who don't treat them appropriately and are looking to do something. And my big concern, and sitting up here, having to answer to any parent who gets up at that podium, God forbid, a month from now and says, how could you allow this to happen, when you knew, every kook in the country knew, that at 10 o'clock on this day they were coming out protesting exactly that issue? How could you create a target-rich environment? It's not my decision, it's the administration's decision, but I can't sit here and tell the administration that they're wrong based on what I know about the physical facts. I don't at all. Nobody up here wants to stifle that message. But everybody up here, and Mr. Davino said it best at the last meeting, that he gets up, I'm taking words out of your mouth now, not putting them in, every day thinking, is today the day? Because when you have 2,300 people, kids that you're responsible for, you think about that every day. And that's all we're trying to do, is make sure they're safe. That's what this whole movement is about, increasing safety. So please don't tell people that we're stifling their
That's
voices.
what everybody's saying. That's
Well,
really
but-
how it. That's all right. The people I've been talking about.
Well,
with,
I'm telling you, we don't want to stifle their voices. We want their voices to be heard. Guys, I hope you're going to go back and tell people in your meeting tomorrow, we want your voices to be heard, but we want you safe on the 14th, because we want you back on the 15th, because we want those voices to continue to be heard, because they need to continue to be heard. Thank you.
How will they be heard? Oh, Paula Saha, 116 Tucker Avenue. I'm just wondering, so part of the reason that they want to do this is because they want to be seen and heard.
Mhm.
If they're inside the school, you won't allow visitors, I'm sure, because for good reason. How are they going to be heard?
That's a topic that has been ongoing, I know, with the students and the administration, trying to figure out press access, live streaming. Those are the logistics that are.
So I just want to take a second to just point out how remarkable it is that we're all sitting here talking about getting permission to do a protest, which it's kind of crazy, but because we do understand that this is a very specific situation, I think we all do. I think we all understand that there's a lot of important security issues here, and we totally get that, and we understand the position you're in. So I would just urge you, as much as possible, to consider that the point of the walkout, and we don't have to get too involved in the walkout word, but the point is to be seen and heard by the general public. So please consider that when you are thinking about the constraints you're going to put on these kids, because that's what they want. And, you know, our kids, I'm a middle school parent. I didn't tell my kid about the walkout. They came home and told me about it. They came home and their friends, and they got together, and they've been doing it on their own, and they want to be heard and seen, and that's a big part of this. So please consider, when you're coming up with the constraints, which we understand that there are security issues here, consider how they're going to be seen and heard by the public at large, because that's what they want to be part of.
Thank you.
Erica Du Bois, 15 South Trivet Ave.
Erica, you don't have to lean over. It'll pick you up.
Sorry, I'll use my teacher voice. You kind of stole a little my thunder. I was going to mention that the letter from the Department of Education.
In fairness, I literally stole it from you
your
because
wife.
you posted it earlier
Yeah,
today.
so I figured that because I talked to your wife. But they do seem to lay out some protocols for this, knowing that it's going to happen. And I'm wondering, I don't know what the protocol is for dealing with this letter. Is your administration going to meet with the local police department in regards to this letter? No, they haven't. I don't believe they have yet. I'm not sure.
There have been discussions.
About this particular letter?
No, about the event.
Okay, because it says that schools are encouraged to prepare by taking steps to ensure the gathering is away from areas of view and all the things we've talked about. I watched your last meeting. I agree with you. I know about safety concerns.
Sorry, Erica, that letter is from the state.
The State Board of Ed. Yeah.
The Department of
I have
Education.
extra. Yeah. I have extra if you need.
That's right. Yeah, please.
So
there was also one that went out at the same time from the New Jersey School Board Association. So I think people were getting
Okay. So this is dated February 27th, and it's guidance for possible student demonstrations. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm not that type of person at a, faculty meeting, but it does say that the New Jersey Department of Ed has worked with state law enforcement officials to prepare guidance to help school districts take proactive steps to ensure the demonstration occurs under safest conditions possible. And they'll continue to share additional recommendations. Schools are encouraged to prepare to ensure that any student gathering is away from areas of view or easily accessible to the general public wherever possible. Assembly sites and pedestrian routes should not be exposed to vehicular traffic. Controlling access to the gathering site is critical. So it talks all about being outside, but just controlling that environment. And I'm just here to, as a parent, to encourage that we kind of maybe take their guidance on this, and I hope that you guys will. Our police department, like you said, is fantastic, and I think you guys could come together with a reasonable approach to this and follow the guidelines from the State Department of Education. We don't need to rehash all the safety concerns. I watched the last meeting, and I don't disagree with all of them. And I just wanted to present this because I didn't know, I haven't heard this mentioned before, so when I saw it today, I wanted to just talk about it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is this on? Okay. Mayor Raimondo, 34 Tucker Ave. I was here last week. I just want to reiterate my concerns from last week's meeting regarding school safety and increased security. I actually made a Facebook page purposely for this so I can join Springfield Moms and to gain more support and ideas for this cause. I did receive a lot of feedback from other mothers expressing their concerns and ideas. There were some posts and I exchanged some emails with other mothers regarding different ideas. One, as mentioned earlier, is a police officer stationed at each campus, and I know obviously money is an issue. Improved security at front doors, showing an ID to get to someone before you're actually buzzed in, or someone stationed at the front door checking IDs. I went to Walton numerous occasions, rang the bell, I'm here to pick up my son. Didn't ask name, didn't ask CID, nothing, let me in. I mean, I'm sure they know me by now, but still. And yeah, I know, but I've been here many times to pay aftercare tuitions, and same thing. What are you here for? I need to pay a bill. They buzz you right in. Expect you to go to the office. There was maybe 2 times where there was someone stationed at the front. So I feel like that's an issue. Now I know budget is always an issue, but I don't think money should deter us from keeping our children as safe as possible. There were offers on Facebook for donations, as well as ideas for fundraising or GoFundMe pages for this. Another idea that was brought up is to form an official parent subcommittee to work with the Board of Ed and administrators geared towards school security/safety. This would enable interested parents to have more involvement and more of a voice in regards to these matters, as well as facilitate any fundraising that may be needed. I also reached out to the PTA. I really want to just work with everyone, not against anyone. I think that we need to come together to do this for our children. As a mother, I want to be able to voice my concerns regarding my children and their safety and do anything I can to protect them. I know I cannot protect them from everything. I know I cannot control everything, but I want to know that they are as safe as possible when they are at school. I do not expect an answer or a solution immediately, but I would like you to work with us, the parents, and to hear our ideas.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the concern and look forward to you continuing to share your ideas as we go forward.
Okay. Is anything like something like that? Would that be a possibility to form some kind of parent committee that's interested in pursuing this further?
We can definitely look at something like that. The administration handles the facility issues and school safety and protocols, but to the extent that you want to put something together and work maybe through the PTAs to come up with suggestions, there's no monopoly on good ideas. So if somebody's got a good idea or sees something different that we don't see, bring them to us,
Okay.
and we'll see what we can do.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Ariel Miller, 50 Redwood Road. I would like to first thank the board for everything that they do and volunteer of their time. And I wrote a prepared statement, but a lot of this was covered. And I hear what you're saying, that safety is the #1 issue. We all agree that it is. It comes down to what we consider to be, what's the standard. We can't be completely safe. It doesn't exist, right? We can't be. If we were safe as possible, we would be homeschooling our children and never get on an airplane or drive into a car. I think the standard needs to be reasonably safe. It's all about reason and rationality. Now, I hear that the problem is that it's a targeted time, and that's why letting them go outside is an issue. Unless there's a specific threat, from my understanding, that's speculation. Unless there is a specific threat, and I think that changes everything, then it's just a possibility, no more or less likely than, I hate to say it out loud, but no more or less likely than that's the day a student chooses to come and bring a gun. We can't keep them completely safe. So what is reasonable? I would argue that allowing students to protest on the school fields in coordination with the police department meets the criteria of being reasonably safe. If it makes you feel better, allow parents to sign a waiver for the kids who want to do it, and then it's not on you. Because here's the thing. When these students come home from school that night and turn on the evening news and see helicopter footage from all over New Jersey and the rest of the states of students gathering on their football fields or marching in their neighborhoods, and they realize they weren't a part of that, they won't think it's because their school administrators care more deeply about their safety than all these other school districts. Instead, they will have learned a lesson in fear. They will have been stopped from doing something that's important to them, that will help build them into citizens of this country, a lesson in democracy. They won't be stopped because of rational concerns, but because of irrational fear. And as educators, that cannot be a lesson you want to teach your students.
Anybody else? Would anybody else like to come up and speak? All right.
Hi, I'm Caitlin McTurnan. I live at 175 Tooker Avenue. So I just have a question. What is safer about having a bell ring at 2:31 and letting all the kids out of school and walk outside into the back parking lot than having an organized protest that is backed and supported by the administration that can be organized and have police officers there that make it safe? I don't understand how letting kids out of school is safer than having an organized protest.
I think it really comes down to what I was saying before, that, there are kids outside school every day. You're outside before you come on your way in. You're outside when you leave. There's no way around that. But the difference is this is a specific time where the specific purpose for being outside is to make a statement about guns. And the thought that in providing a place that can't be fully protected for you to make that statement, a statement that, by the way, I personally agree with completely. But allowing you to put yourselves in a position that we can't fully protect. The thought that one of you or many of you could be harmed in the name of raising your voices in favor of school safety, I just can't even imagine that. And that's the difference, that when you go outside because you're going out for gym, or you go outside because you're leaving school, you're not doing it to make a statement. And everybody in the country with access to a gun who disagrees with you isn't looking to say, at 2:31 I'm going to make a statement today to disagree with people who disagree with me. And to me, that's the difference between all the other times you're out and what people have put out there as, put a big red star at this date at this time, go to the flagpole at any school. That scares the heck out of me. And I know it scares the heck out of the administration, because the one thing we want to do, like I said before, is make sure your voices are heard on the 14th and the 15th and every day after that. So I, for one, don't want to do anything to stifle your voice. I want to make sure it's still there. And that's really, for me, and it's not my, it's not my decision. I'm just one person with an opinion, but that's how I think about it.
I do hate to say it, but I don't think that the date of a national walkout, March 14th at 10 o'clock, would make a difference to anyone who wanted to target students here. And I do hate to say it again, but I don't think that a date or a time that is nationally projected would make a difference to someone who wanted to target, whether they knew the kids were going to be outside or not. I don't think that would have an impact. And it could happen. Like, what's to say that it won't happen on March 15th?
It could happen anytime, absolutely. It scares the heck out of me thinking about that time being targeted. I hope you're right. We all hope you're right, obviously. But we can't know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel Gary, 19 Sherwood Road. First of all, I want to commend the 4 presidents who came up here. I'm going to be a little biased, 2 of them are mine, but I do want to commend them for coming out tonight. They all are sitting there with laptops. They all have homework to do, so I do want to commend them. The question I have for you, and they're doing their best to make this a concerted effort for all of the students for their various classes. What are you going to do for the kids who are going to walk out?
Address where we are on that now?
And like I said, they're doing their best to make sure that whatever it is a concerted effort by all the student body. But there are 4 students who are leading their grades. What are you going to do for the kids who do walk out? Or what about?
Plans are obviously still in a state of evolution and development. One of the things that all of the directives that have come out have stated, and quite clearly, it's a regular school day. And school will continue. Any students that choose not to leave their classroom, their teachers must remain in the classroom. So we also are making arrangements. We've already been made aware of some students who are pretty much scared already and are quite concerned. They don't even want to come to school on that day. And we're making arrangements to address those children and their frailties within that time frame, should they come to school, which we're obviously trying to promote, once again, within the context of providing a safe environment. The last thing we want to do is to make any activity or action create concern within children that are frail and unable to deal with that. And the teachers that have their entire classes that chose to leave will report to the principal for distribution in all areas to ensure, to the best of our ability, the safety of the student population. But I have staff members who are quite concerned about their safety with respect to what could take place in a heightened sense of awareness. It places them in a position where I certainly don't want to put them in a position of being insubordinate when directed to do something that's not of their making when they are legally charged with the responsibility of assuring the safety of our students. So once again, the safety of our students is paramount. We're going to do everything in our power to provide them a viable access. Not every school district, I can tell you, we met on Friday with 20 other superintendents. Trust me, not every school district is allowing outside demonstrations. Yes, the helicopters and the pictures will be about the ones that either violate school directives or schools allow it, etc. No one, maybe no one, we would hope someone would value different approaches to delivering a message. I don't believe that there's only one way to deliver a message. I believe there's a variety of ways of delivering a message. And I also understand my responsibility as the person in charge. I have to assure that not just one particular group of parents' beliefs and systems are supported. I have parents who've already contacted me wanting to be assured that their child, who they don't want walking out, will be cared for and taken care of with the same degree of attention as every other child, and I am guaranteeing that publicly. Every child, the code of conduct is a code that is applied in every situation. This situation cannot get a different code of conduct, regardless of whether a person agrees or disagrees. Students who violate the code of conduct during this period of time shouldn't be treated less harshly or more harshly because of a position. The standard application is exactly what's been done. How it's been handled here in the high school in the past, how it's been handled at the middle school in the past will be exactly how it's handled going forward. And any student who chooses to not participate will be able to stay within their class without any difficulty or concerns as to where they would have to go. They stay right in their classroom. School will proceed as scheduled.
Well, I appreciate you guys listening to these leaders and for them coming and trying to come up with a compromise that will, appease everyone. And I know it's a hard choice.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the goal, is to come up with a compromise as to bring it back full circle to where the kids were at the beginning, and where I think we're all in agreement is to come up with a compromise that makes sure not only that their message is heard, but that they are the messengers, that they're the ones that direct the content of the activity, but do it in a way that's safe and that never puts them in jeopardy of running afoul of the code of conduct. So it's applied evenly because it never has to be applied because they're never running into it. And I think the suggestions that they've come up with and that they're going to work on again tomorrow and hopefully be able to present to the building administration will go a long way towards getting everybody to that place. So thank you, guys. I'll ask one last time. Anybody else? That was the point where you were supposed to say, "No, that's okay. It's late enough."
I know. It'll be.
Thank you.
Chuck Fry, 11 Cayuga Court. You're right on. You had me on a lot of things, Scott. But when you said that 2:31 is not really any different than any other time of the day, or probably wouldn't cause a shooter to come on the ground at that time. That's when the shooter did come on Parkland, I think, at the end of the day. So I think Katie's right. 2:31 is a little scary time as far as I'm concerned.
I just meant it wasn't. There was no message associated with it. That's.
But I think it's a very disruptive time of the day. So I think that, that is actually a time a shooter may want to do something like that. But anyway, one suggestion I had: the back parking lot, the student parking lot. If you put 2 cop cars, stopping all cars coming in at that time for 17 minutes, and put another cop car before the entrance to the parking lot. Tell the kids they can't park that day. If they want to do this, and they can't park that day. 17 minutes in the back there. I think there are plenty of trees back there. I don't think you could see it from Mizell, I mean,
That's, Mizell is the big concern, that.
I understand, but I think Mizell's far enough back there. I mean, anything could happen, I guess. Somebody could parachute out of the sky, and I'm not being funny, but they could, I guess. But I think that you really are pretty safe back there for 17 minutes. I know that Zoe really wants to do it the way that most of the other schools would like to do it. And she just is really trying to bend to what the administration wants, but I know that she really would like, and I know these other kids really want to do something more, and of course be safe. I can't imagine a safer place on these grounds. I can't talk about the other schools because I don't really know, but on these grounds in that back parking lot. So just a thought for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, new business. I think we have a motion. Do you want to, Mr. Cagliari, do you want to read the motion in, then we'll have somebody move it?
Sure, I'll walk you through. It's actually two motions.
Let's take them one at a time.
Thank you very much. All right, I can handle that. I can hold the button and talk at the same time. You'd be stunned.
You don't need to.
All right, so the first motion would be a motion before the board to reconsider item 27 under new business from your meeting of February 26.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Shanis. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, Mr. Clark, will you please call the roll? I'm assuming you moved that with a roll call.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mrs. Gamarikian? Yes. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Munoz?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Yes. Mrs. Shanis? Yes. Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motion passes. We will reconsider that decision.
All right, then, Mr. President, now that the motion is available to be reconsidered, the board has an opportunity to make a motion to rescind its approval of item 27, which was approved under new business on February 26.
So moved with a roll call vote.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Shanis. Any discussion on the rescinding the vote? Okay, Mr. Clark.
Again, give me a second. Mrs. Gamarikian? Yes. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Munoz?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Yes. Mrs. Shanis? Yes. Mr. Silverstein?
Yes. Motion passes. The vote is rescinded. Any
Thank you,
other
Mr. President.
New business. Thank you.
Yeah, old actually. Mr. Clark, do we have policy reviews from all the non-policy committee members?
Well, it's funny you should ask. That was part of what I was going to ask the board. Remember, you need to get the 8,000s and 9,000s back to me by this
today.
Friday. Is it today?
No,
Was it today?
Today.
Okay.
I can answer the answer is no, you don't have all of them.
I know
but
I
you
don't.
will by Friday.
I was being nice. But thank you, Mrs. Shanis. But you really have until, I'd say, this coming Friday. If you haven't gotten to them, please get to them by Friday. Get them to me. That way I can collate them for the policy committee, which is meeting Monday at 6 p.m.
Yeah, also, I was going to ask if we can move that to 6:30, if that's not a problem.
Who else is on the committee? I forget.
Hillary. And you and who's the other two now?
Robin and, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
I'll correspond with the committee members offline.
I think the other three are.
The other three are absent today.
Absent, yeah.
Okay, I'll work with those guys.
All right. Anybody else? New business? Old business? Any business? Last call.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Shanis, seconded by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.